Hey, welcome to or back to BarbieCoProductions, and today I have this 2000s Ken doll that I want to put on a made-to-move body. As you can see, he doesn't have the newer Ken neck type, meaning I can't just head swap him onto a made-to-move body. So instead, I've been practicing customizing the neck so that it can fit onto a made-to-move body. And to do that, the first step is to remove the head using some boiling hot water. I start by putting the doll in a Ziploc bag, and then putting him in the cup of hot water until the vinyl softens. After a minute of being in there, the head should be softened and easily removed, where you can see that he has a very different neck type. Here it is compared to a more current Ken doll neck. But now let's start customizing. The first step I'm doing is using these little cutters to go in and cut off the ring. And then I'm using the same cutters to hollow the neck out a bit. And once I get it to about this point, I'm gonna go in with my Dremel. This will help to thin out the neck and make the head sit better on the made-to-move body. This process is also pretty satisfying. Like this. And this is what I'm gonna go with. Also, if you're wondering what that is inside his head, there is a bunch of this dried up glue. Now that I've sanded that down, here is the neck once again compared to a current Ken neck. Next, I have a pencil and I'm just using this to mark out where I want to cut. And then carefully cutting along that line. Remember, you can always take more plastic off, but you cannot add it back on. So it's better to go in smaller sections and taking off smaller amounts rather than taking off the whole amount straight away. And then I go through trying to match as best as I can on the other side. This is what I ended up with, and now I have just a pretty standard Ken fashionista body. I use these since the neck pegs on them do not break when you're putting the head on and taking the head off all the time. And I'm just using that to check. As you can see, it does look a little bit funky because the plastic around the neck is still pretty thick, so I'm gonna have to sand that down again. But the shape in general does look right, so I'm gonna go with this. Once again, I'm going to go back in and use my Dremel to thin out these sides. This will make sure that the sides of the head sit pretty flush with the neck. And here's what that looks like. Now when I put the head back onto the same body, it looks much better. I looked through my Made to Move collection and found this can. The color match isn't perfect, but it's pretty close, and with only the few skin tone options, you kind of have to just find the closest match. I can put the head on there and see that this is what it'll look like in the end. And I think that looks pretty good. But as you can see, his head is still very loose on the neck, which means it is time to make the neck piece. I've been making these using some of the Zuru mini brands capsules. As you can see, I've been making a few can customs recently. And to do this, I start by just cutting off a piece of this plastic. You might want to use bigger cutters or even scissors, because as you can see, I am struggling a little bit with this. It's kind of difficult to cut through, and I probably should have got some bigger cutters. Now I get the can head and go through and cut down the plastic. I'm trying to go for a similar shape to the opening in the neck. But there's a pretty fine line between the piece being too small or too big, and you can't really tell until you've gone through and finished making it, because it both needs to go through the neck and also stick out enough to hold the head onto the neck. But it is lucky that one mini brand's capsule half can make a ton of neck peg pieces. So even if you mess up on the first one, like I did plenty of times, you can always go through and make another one. I think this is the shape I'm gonna go with, and now I'm just going in with a pen to add a little mark to the middle, as this is where the opening needs to be. So far I've found two methods to doing this, and for the first one I start by cutting a line through the plastic like this. And then I fold the piece in half. Snip out the middle. And then I go through with the cutters and slowly snip off little bits of plastic to make this opening a bit bigger. This process can be a little bit tedious, but if you don't have any drills or power tools or anything to make a hole in the plastic with, this method will still work. And then once that's done, I just snip all the way through to the opening, like this, and that's done. For the second method, I get a drill bit that is a similar size to this piece here in the middle of the neck peg, and use that piece to drill a hole through the mark. Like this. And then I repeat the same process of snipping the plastic, and I find with both methods they're a bit easier to get on if you snip the corners on both sides like this. It kind of makes the circle in the middle look a bit like an ice cream. And now the next step is to just add the piece onto the neck. And lastly, add the head. And now he is all done. As you can see, the head is a little bit loose, and I think I cut the plastic just a little high on the sides of his neck, but I did try a different neck peg piece that was a slightly different shape, and this one seems to work better for him. So if it doesn't quite work with the head, try cutting out another neck piece. I went through my clothes box and found him an outfit. Here's what that looks like on. And I'm also going to add these shoes. Here's what the full outfit looks like. I think he looks pretty cool. I am thinking that in future I will repaint his face, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do yet. So if you have any ideas for what changes he could have or any name suggestions, feel free to let me know in the comments. But that is the end of today's video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, or check out my community tab where I post regular behind the scenes pictures and updates. Bye! Just as a quick disclaimer, my videos are intended for a 13+ audience and are not made for kids. As an adult who collects dolls, I use customization methods and sharp tools that are not suitable for children.